Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. We are back for another economics and personal finance class, and we are going to continue our lesson on using credit wisely. This is a continuation of our last class, so we're going to go forward with some more assignments today that will bring home using credit wisely. Our learning objectives for today include, at the conclusion of this lesson, every student will be able to understand and describe the elements of credit, explain how the use of credit influences credit scores, and you will be able to evaluate and explain the purpose of your major consumer credit laws. Before we go any further, let's go with our classroom norms. Please make sure everyone is visible on their cameras. Be prepared to respond verbally, so make sure you are able to turn your microphone on and off, and make sure you have your Zoom chat feature accessible. Again, your camera needs to be on. I need to see every student in the camera, and you need to be able to respond via the Zoom chat as well as turning your microphone on and off. For today's lesson, we're going to need the following material. You're going to need a sheet of images, which I will provide for you. You're also going to need the credit versus debit card comparison sheet. You're going to have a student activity number 1, which is about more than plastic. And you're going to have a student activity number 2, which is about the consumer credit laws. Again, our learning objectives, what you will be able to do at the end of today's lesson is you will understand and describe the elements of credit. You will be able to explain the use of credit explain how the use of credit will influence your credit score. And you will be able to evaluate and explain the purpose of some of the major consumer credit laws. Let's get started. I'm going to show you some images on the screen. And when I show you these images, I want you to choose one image that you would like to purchase right now if you were able to do so. I'm going to share my screen and show these images. Let me make it big enough for you. And again, you're going to choose one. Can everyone see my screen? What you should see is 4 images. Looking at those 4 images, if you were able to purchase one of these items today, choose one. You can only choose one. Let's just imagine you can purchase one of these. Would you choose the laptop? Would you choose the home? Would you choose the 75-inch outdoor television? Or would you choose the electric car? Let's assume it's a Tesla. Okay. Take another 10 seconds. Everyone choose one item that you would buy today if you could purchase it. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, so you chose your one item that you would purchase if you could. What did you choose? Okay, I'm looking at the chat and I see some of you chose the house. I particularly would like the house. Some of you chose the outside television. I didn't know there was a difference between an inside and an outside television. I guess that television can be in the weather. Who knows? I guess we'll find out if we ever get the opportunity to buy one of those. Of course, somebody wanted the car. I see your responses. Okay, great. So we had the laptop. We need one right now, right? So I see that everyone has chosen an item that they would purchase. And it seems as if some of you chose the house. I would love the house. Some of you are thinking more practical for right now. So you chose the laptop. Some of you would love to be outdoors with the big old television. And of course, some of you chose the car. Now, looking at that item, I asked you to choose one and you did. My question to you is, how would you purchase that item without cash? You can respond verbally through your microphone, or you can respond in the chat. And I'm looking at your chat options. Keep in mind, this is a continuation of our last class, and we are talking about using credit wisely. So if you did not have cash to purchase that item, how would you purchase that item without cash? Exactly, credit. Credit is our subject. So obviously, credit is going to be one of the answers or ways that you can purchase that item without having cash. Now, with that being said, you're going to purchase this item with credit. How would you determine if this item is worth it or not? Ah, so you feel that it's worth it because you need it. But what other ways can we determine if an item is really worth it or not, especially since we're talking about credit? Great, thank you. The amount of interest. We talked about interest before. So we're talking here, an item that we would like to purchase, but other than the fact that we want to own this item, how do we determine its worth? Someone in the chat said that they would look at how much interest they had to pay if they used credit, which is a very good thing to look at, because the next question that I'm asking you is, what is the cost of using credit? And from our previous discussion, we know that the cost of using credit is interest. When you use credit, you are charged interest. That is the cost of using credit. When you use credit, you have to pay more. That is the cost. Now, what I'm going to do at this very moment, since we have all chosen our item, we know that we can't pay for it with cash. We are going to use credit. I want to make sure that we know the difference between credit, the cost of credit, and other items that look like credit. Let's go over what we talked about last class, just to have a quick overview. In the last class, we talked about debit and credit cards and how they look alike and how they also act similar, how they're similar in some aspects. However, we did talk about the fact that when we are using a debit card, it is slightly different from using a credit card. And since we're talking about credit, what I want to do is I want to go back and revisit the credit versus debit comparison chart. I'm going to share my screen again. I'm going to go to the credit versus debit comparison chart, and we're going to look at that really quickly just to go back and look at what we talked about last class. So if you look at your screen, I have here, I'm going to share the credit versus debit comparison chart, just so we know, because we have chosen our item, and what we need to do with that item is we need to figure out what it's going to cost. I did not put prices up here because I don't want to get too far into how much is going to cost exactly, but we do know that what it is going to cost is more than what the sticker price is, because the cost of using credit is interest. Interest is extra money added on to the price because you are essentially getting a what? Somebody say it. When you're using credit, you're essentially getting a, correct, a loan. And when you receive a loan, it's secured by collateral, which is the item itself, or interest. So let's look at the difference between a credit card and a debit card. Looking here, it shows you the difference. Credit cards are lines of credit, and I won't read every one of these with you. This is just a recap from the last class, but credit cards are a line of credit. When you use a credit card, they're putting money towards the transaction. This is a loan to you, and you are expected to pay that back in full. If you're using a debit card, anytime you use a debit card, and some of you in high school, you already have a debit card. It is connected to your checking account. When you go to Walmart and you use a debit card, it asks credit or debit. When you hit debit, it takes the money directly from your checking account, which means if you don't have any money in your checking account, exactly, you can't use that debit card. Whereas if you're using a credit card, it is a loan and you have a line of credit for a certain amount, which allows you to use that amount in the stores, whether you have the money available right now or not. That is the major difference between a credit card and a debit card. A credit card is a loan. Write that down in your notebook if you need to. A debit card uses the money that you have on hand. It says here, again, a credit card is not connected to a checking account, but it is connected to whatever bank gave you the credit. A debit card is connected to your checking or savings. So if the money is there, then you have money to use. If the money is not there, you do not have money to use. A credit card charges interest if you don't pay the bill in full. A debit card does not charge interest because you're using your own money. These are just some of the major differences between credit cards and debit cards. And we went over these the last time, so I won't go over all of them. You do have this sheet available to you in your resource folder. So if you need to refer back to this sheet for the difference between a credit card and a debit card, then you can go to your resource folder and pull up this sheet. The sheet of images is also in your resource folder. Everything that we're using today is in your resource folder already, so you have access to it on your side. I will show it on my side as we work through it. So going back to what you chose an item. If we put a price on that, and I'll let you put a price on it, make sure it's a realistic price. If you put a price on that, how much interest do you think you're going to pay using a credit card for that item? How long do you think you're going to have to pay for that item? Is that item worth it after you have figured out how much you're actually going to pay for the item and how long it's going to take to pay off that item? Now, worth is subjective. You may say it's not worth it if I have to pay 30 years for a home, because a home mortgage is about 30 years. Okay. You may say it's not worth it if I have to pay 5 or 6 years for a car, because you want it now and you want it to be paid for. But it's subjective. It depends on the person. For me, yes, I would pay for a home for 30 years. I'm currently paying for a home. At this time in your life, you're a teenager, so you may not see it as a good thing to do to pay for something for 30 years, but that is normally how it works when you are paying for something that costs the amount of money that a home costs. It's normally 5 or 6 years when you buy a new car. That's how long it takes to pay that car off. A television, you can pay that off a little quicker, a couple of months if you continue to pay your credit card, or you may be able to pay it in cash. Laptop, the same thing. Those are things that you can pay off a little quicker than a house and a car. So when you purchase things on credit, what you need to do is you need to look at the cost, look at how much it's going to cost you once the interest is added to it, and look at how long it's going to take for you to pay that item off. That is how you're going to determine if that item was really worth what you're going to pay for it. So worth is not just financial, worth is also time. Is it worth it? Let's move on to our next assignment. What we're going to do next, before we move to our next assignment, we're going to do a group assignment, but let's quickly have a pause point. I have a question for you, and you can answer verbally or you can answer in the chat. Why is the cost of an item or service more expensive if you purchase it with credit instead of with cash? Again, why is the cost of an item or service more expensive if you purchase it with credit instead of with cash? We just discussed this. I see some answers coming through the chat. I see some of you raising your hands using the emoji. If you're raising your hand, you can answer in the chat or you can unmute your mic and answer. Exactly. You guys are right on point. We just discussed this. The reason why some items or services will cost more when you pay for it with credit is because you are being charged interest. Interest is the cost of using credit. All right. Thank you very much. Let's move on to our group assignment. In the group assignment, I'm going to put you in groups of 3 in breakout sessions and breakout rooms. And as I put you in groups of 3, what you're going to do is you are going to collaborate with your classmates on student activity number 1. It's called More Than Plastic. On student activity number 1, what you're going to do is you're going to define the key terms. There are 6 key terms, which is why I have you in groups of 3. You can kind of break it off 2 per person. However, everyone must collaborate on each definition. There are 6 terms. I want you in your groups to look at the 6 terms, and I want you to define those terms in your own words. Do not Google answers. Do not use AI, of course. I want you, based on what we talked about last class and the little bit that we've talked about today, I want you to define those terms in your own words. Now, although you're working collaboratively in groups of 3, every person is going to be responsible for turning in their own paper, which is why it is a copy to you in your resource folder. So when you open your resource folder and you pull out student activity number 1, please make sure you put your name, today's date, and today's bell on it. And as you guys collaborate together on what the definitions are in your own words, each person needs to fill out the activity sheet. You need to save it, and you're going to submit it to the folder that is listed as student activity number 1, More Than Plastic. Submit it to the Dropbox. That is how you're going to receive your grade for that assignment. Go ahead and take this time and go into your breakout groups They are already established. There's only 3 people per group, and I will visit each group to make sure you're on task and to answer any questions you may have. This is a 15-minute assignment, and the breakout group will end in 15 minutes. Great, we're back. I'm glad you enjoyed the breakout group. I visited some of your groups. I visited all of your groups, and you had some very interesting answers. I like the way you define those key terms in your own words. And that is a way that we can ensure that you actually know the assignment, because you did not give a textbook definition of those key terms. You actually put it in your own words, which is going to help you remember those terms and what they mean and how they are important as far as credit is concerned. Those terms included annual fee. We know that is the fee that credit card companies charge you per year in order to actually maintain the card. The other one was an annual percentage rate. I did hear some of you say that is the interest rate that they're going to charge you when you use the card. Correct. Credit line. That is how much the company allows you to have. 200, 500, and it is based on your credit score and how credit worthy you are. Somebody said that in one of the groups, and that was impressive. Cash back and rewards. We're familiar with that. You get cash back and rewards on some cards, credit cards, store cards, and that is for using the card. Balance, which is what you owe, exactly. And minimum payment, which is the minimum amount that you can pay every month without going into default. That is not the full amount. And yes, someone pointed out, you're still going to be charged interest if you only pay the minimum amount. You guys did a great job in your groups on that. Please don't forget to save it to your resource folder and make sure you submit it to the Dropbox that is labeled Student Activity Number 1, More Than Plastic. Let's move forward. Okay, let's move on to our closure for today. And I appreciate everyone for keeping their cameras on the entire time and responding via the chat as well as through your microphone. You guys are doing a great job today, and you seem to really be grasping the concept of using credit wisely. Thank you. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and close for today. Please make sure that you are submitting your assignments to the Dropbox. Let's recap our lesson. We talked about credit laws and how to make sure that how they are available to make sure that no one can unfairly treat you based on your religion, marital status, or race. We talked about the fact that you can get a free credit report every year from annualcreditreport.com. We discussed checking your credit report regularly. And we also discussed that you have the right to challenge errors and get those corrected. What we're going to do now, I want to swoop back and see if you have any questions on anything that we learned today. No questions? Okay, so let me ask you something. How can you use credit wisely? That is my assessment loop for you. We've been talking about credit. We talked about the cost of credit. We talked about credit laws. We talked about the cost of using credit compared to debit. We talked about on student activity number 2, we talked about consumer credit laws, but how can you use credit wisely? I need you to answer that in the chat. That is going to be our closure for today. That is going to bring us back to where we started, because that initially was our essential question. How can we use credit wisely? Some of you are responding that we can use credit wisely by only using credit when necessary. Good answer. Only using credit in an emergency. Okay. Use credit for big items that we cannot pay for with cash, but can make small payments on. That would go along with the minimum payment. How else can we use credit wisely? Great. You're going to use credit if you have cash to make the payment, because using credit can be beneficial as long as you're able to make those payments. You guys are making some great points. Please be sure that you have submitted your assignment, student activity number 1, to the Dropbox, as well as student activity number 2. Student activity number 2 was the consumer credit laws. We're going to go ahead and move on to the reflection section. This is your flex time, and I noticed that you guys are pretty sufficient on using credit wisely. We've been working on this for at least 3 classes, so this is the 3rd class that we have worked on this, so we are coming to the end of using credit wisely. So what I want you to do now in your journals, I want you to recap what you've learned from today's lesson. What I want you to write about is write about the costs and benefits of credit, because we did discuss credit, its costs and its benefits. There are some benefits to using credit, and there are some costs to using credit. So write about that in your journal. I'll check journal entries at the end of the week. And please tell me also, how can students use credit as a part of a smart financial lifestyle? That goes back to your assessment loop where I asked, how can you use credit wisely? So in your journal, I want you to write about the costs and benefits of using credit. And I want you to tell me, how can students use credit as a part of a smart financial lifestyle? Don't forget to submit your activities, student activity number 1 and student activity number 2, to their individual drop boxes. Your name, date, and bell should be on each. And again, thank you everyone for keeping your cameras on and responding via the microphone and the Zoom chat box. This is the conclusion of our lesson for today. Don't forget to submit your assignments. Please complete your journal entries, and I will see you next class. I will remain online if anyone has any individual questions that they need me to answer for them. Have a great day. Thank you.